Good morning, everyone. I hope y'all are having a good morning today. It's going to hopefully be a pretty day later today. I know it's a little cloudy, at least at my house this morning, but hopefully it'll clear up and you all can get out and have some fun. This morning we're going to talk about relationships. Okay, now we're not going to talk about friendships or relationships like your mommy and daddy has or their friendships and stuff like that. We're going to talk about the relationships that plants and animals have out in the wild in nature. So many plants and animals have different names to them, like and it's different relationships too. Like sometimes you have a friend who it's your best friend, you like to do everything with, and then you may have other friends that you just like to hang out with and talk and stuff like that. So each relationship that you have with different people is different. Well, it's the same way with these animals. They all have there's all kinds of different relationships that animals can have. Okay, so they're called symbiotic relationships, and there's different types. Okay, so what happens is these animals are going to benefit one another somehow or another. Okay, so that's why we call them symbiotic. Now there's different kinds. We have mutualistic, and this is where both animals in the relationship benefit. Okay, and if they benefit, that means that they're both getting something from the relationship. So you could kind of think about how that you may have a friend and your parents are going to take you to Dollywood, but they're also going to let you take a friend to Dollywood too. Okay, so you both benefit. Does that make sense? Okay, so mutualistic means that both of the animals are going to benefit from this relationship. Okay, so some many birds and insects and bats get food from drinking nectar from flowers, and in the process the flowers get pollinated, which helps them to produce seeds. So those animals get food, but the flower is able to produce seeds. So that's really important, and that's a benefit for both of them, because if the flower can't produce seeds, then it can't continue its life cycle. Alright, so some fish get their meals by cleaning parasites off of other fish. Many birds and animals will carry seeds with them and disperse them. They'll fall off the animal somewhere else because they've ate the plant's fruit. I'm sorry, I got a little ahead of myself there. Okay, so many birds and mammals will, as they're walking through the woods and stuff, they might get like a little burr stuck to them and stuff. Those are seeds. And they'll carry them around until either they fall off or the animal's grooming itself and it falls off. And then that seed drops and it's going to make another plant. Alright, so some animals eat the fruit and then it's going to come out when they go to the bathroom. And so that seed is going to grow where it fell, and it's already got ready-made fertilizer. Kind of weird, isn't it? So if you've been in class with me when we've talked about trees and plants and all that stuff, I've mentioned about cedar trees and how they have little berries on them, and birds like the berries, and they'll eat the berries, and then you'll see a whole lot of cedar trees growing up in people's fence lines and stuff. That's because the birds sit there and rest, and when they rest, they go to the bathroom, and that seed, that berry, comes out when they go to the bathroom, and then that seed grows where they pooped. So that's a mutualistic relationship. The bird gets food, but the tree is able to drop its seed somewhere else and start a new tree. Okay? Alright, so some relationships, that's mutualistic, where they both get a benefit. Some relationships are commensal. That means that one animal is going to be benefited, but the other one is not going to be affected by it. Like, there's nothing good or bad going to happen to that animal. Okay? So, it might be like frogs in a rainforest. They carry their young little babies to water-filled plants named bromeliads, which are really pretty flowers. You need to look it up on Google. They're really pretty. They carry them to bromeliads. These bromeliads grow attached to the tree trunks and branches of trees. Well, the frogs will put their tadpoles in these bromeliads, and it's a safe place for these tadpoles to develop into frogs. because the bromeliad, you know, there's not a whole lot of things that'll eat that. So those frogs are safe inside of that bromeliad, and they develop in the water that's pond up inside of it. So the frogs are benefited because it's a safe place for them to live, but the bromeliad is not affected. The frogs growing inside of it doesn't hurt it or help it, either one. It just is there. Some moths feed on the tears of cows and other animals. They drink the tears, but it doesn't hurt or help the cows. Okay? So that's commensalism. One's going to benefit, the other one's not affected. All right. So in a parasitic relationship, one partner benefits, but the other one is negatively affected. That means it's going to be harmed, okay? And you may have heard about parasites and stuff before. If you have cats and dogs and stuff like that, they get parasites, and it's not good for the animals. It makes them sick. Okay, so think about like fleas and ticks. Fleas and ticks are going to suck the blood of their host. So, you know, when your dogs and cats get fleas and ticks, they itch. They might get diseases from them. If we get bit, and if we get tick bit, we can get diseases and stuff like that. So that harms us, but it helps the flea and tick because that's what they eat. Okay, so the flea and tick is benefited, but we are harmed. All right, so cuckoo birds lay their eggs in the nests of other birds. And so when they hatch, the cuckoo chicks push the other chicks out of the nest, and the host bird raises the young cuckoos as if the chicks were her own. So the cuckoos are benefited, but the original babies are harmed because they've been pushed out of their nest. Okay, so that is parasitic relationships. All right. All right. So let's think about this like a classified ad in the newspaper, okay? So we know that sometimes people put want ads in the paper, you know, wanting help or needing this or needing that, okay? So let's imagine that these things I'm going to read to you are want ads in the newspaper, and these ads are asking for a symbiotic relationship with another plant or animal out in nature, okay? So here's the first one. All right, so pollen mover needed. Will give sweet, energy-packed nectar in exchange for carrying pollen to other flowers. Must bring a long tube to reach the nectar. Call Flora 555-9377. Okay, so we need someone who's going to move pollen. And in the process of that, moving that pollen, in the process of moving that pollen, the other person's going to get the nectar that they need in order to survive. Okay, so we have a benefit because it's going to move the pollen so that they can create seeds. The other guy is going to get food that he needs. So that relationship is mutualistic. Okay, mutualism. All right. This is mutualism. Both of them are getting something good out of this relationship, all right? So, Flora, let's say that Flora is an orchid. And let's say that the animal she's wanting is a moth. Moths are active at night, right? But they feed just like butterflies do. They have a straw-like tube that they can coil up like a hose, and the feeding tube can be like 12 inches long. It's huge. And they can go down into the flower and get the nectar, and in the process they're getting pollen all over their body, and when they move to the next flower they rub that pollen off as they're trying to get more nectar, okay? So many plants rely on animals to pollinate their flowers. So in some cases plants depend on certain animals, not just any animal, but certain animals, okay? So you think about this orchid and then this moth who has a 12-inch long tongue. That orchid may need something with that big long tongue to get down in there and get the nectar, okay? Something like a butterfly's is not nearly. We raised some butterflies a couple of weeks ago, and we were really sad. We had one that was trying to hatch from its chrysalis, and it didn't hatch all the way. And so we was afraid to pull it out. We was afraid we would kill it, so we tried to feed it and it's still hanging in the chrysalis and stuff. You could see its tongue, and its tongue was not nearly 12 inches long. So they have to, these orchids have to have a certain type of insect to go in and get the nectar and get the pollen and stuff, okay? So another is the Madagascan hawk moth and the orchid. The moth has a 12-inch feeding tube and is the only animal that can reach the nectar supply of that flower, okay? So that's a specific. A lot of flowers we have around here, hummingbirds and butterflies and bees and all that stuff, they can go in and get the nectar. But in this flower, that moth is the only one who can go down in there and get that stuff, okay? All right, so here we go. Here's another want ad. Desperately need protection from insects and climbing vines. We'll provide protein-rich food for your young, a safe home, and nectar in exchange for guard duties. Call Acacia 555-8733. Okay, so we have someone who needs protection, and in exchange for that, their young, their children, will get good food and a safe home. Okay, so this one's getting a benefit and this one's getting a benefit. That's mutualistic. They are both benefiting from that, okay? So acacia has hollow thorns on it, and it's an excellent place for ants to live and raise their young. For adult ants, the trees provide food in the form of the nectaries inside the stems, and at the tips of the leaves, they produce a protein-rich food that the ants feed their little babies. So the ants, in turn, then, are going to protect that acacia tree and chase away anything that might come and try to harm or eat that tree or whatever, okay? So they attack and chase away any insect that's going to land on that tree and hurt it, all right? And it will also go and cut down the competing plants around that tree so that that tree gets the sunlight that it needs in order to grow, okay? And those ants may even attack those large mammals that might come and eat the tree as well, okay? So that's mutualistic. They're both going to benefit. All right, here's another one. Pruning helps me live longer. Pruning means cutting away the branches and stuff, okay? Sometimes trees need to be pruned. Pruning helps me live longer. Can provide safe area for your young to develop in exchange for cutting off the ends of my branches. Call Mimosa 555-6672. Okay, so we have a plant here who needs pruning, and in exchange is going to provide a safe area for that animal's or that insect's young to develop. Okay, so pruning and protection. That's mutualistic. They're both going to develop, or to benefit from that, I'm sorry. They're both going to benefit from that. So we have mimosa trees around here, and even though they are invasive, mimosa trees are not supposed to be in East Tennessee, but they're the ones that have the big fluffy pink blooms on them. They'll be blooming here in about 3 or 4 weeks probably, and they bloom kind of midsummer, late summer. So those are invasive, guys. I love them too. I think they're beautiful, but my husband's a forester, and he is just absolutely like, no, they're invasive. They spread, and they're not supposed to be here, and all that good stuff. Anyways, but mimosas, are this tree, and the mimosa girdler beetle will lay their eggs only in a mimosa tree. That's it. Okay, they won't lay their eggs anywhere else but in this mimosa tree. So mimosa trees will live for about 20 years, and that tree will be girdled by these beetles that may live twice as long as the tree, but they are pruning off the branches of that tree and helping that tree to grow. Okay, so that's a mutualistic relationship. All right, here's another one. Extremely strong individual seeks partner to help locate nests of wild bees. We'll rip open nest and share the contents in exchange for guide services. Call Millie Rattel 555-2473. Okay, so somebody needs a guide to find wild bee nests, and in exchange, they're going to get food. Mutualistic. They are both going to benefit from this, okay? So Millie Rattel is a honey badger, all right? So Rattels are honey badgers. They eat many different foods, including small mammals, birds, dead animals, and plants. If a ratel hears a honey guide making characteristic calls, it will follow that bird, and the bird will lead it to a beehive. And once the ratel has broken open the hive, it will eat the honey and the bees, and the bird will eat the bee larvae and the wax that's in the hive. Honey guides also lead people to beehives. Okay, so that's a bird. So they both benefit. The badger's going to eat the honey and the bees, and the bird will eat the larvae and the wax. Okay, so they both benefit from that. Okay, here's our last one. Seeking individuals to spread seeds around the forest, offering juicy fruit in exchange for delivery services. Call Mr. Pitts, 555-1234. Okay, so somebody needs their seed spread, and in exchange, the other person's going to get juicy fruit to eat. Mutualistic. They are both going to benefit. So Mr. Pitts could be a fruit tree, and the animal that it's going to offer its fruit to might be a flying fox. So flying foxes are active at night, and they may fly long distances from their roosting trees to the trees where they feed. And once flying foxes have found trees that have a lot of fruit on them, they will eat, rest, and digest their food before they fly home. So these large bats are important seed dispersers for many different fruit-bearing trees. So a flying fox is actually a bat. Okay, so they disperse the seeds because the seeds come out when they go to the bathroom. All right? Okay, so we're going to talk about just a few more relationships. All of those were mutualistic. Both people were going to benefit from something, okay? But these others may not necessarily be mutualistic, okay? So, I have a picture here of a crocodile. So, we're going to talk about this crocodile just a minute, all right? So, it's tough not to pick up leeches in the Nile where this crocodile lives. And leeches are little animals that get on you and suck blood off of you and stuff, okay? Because the crocodile skin is so tough, leeches usually attach themselves to the soft area in a reptile's mouth. So they get like around their gums and stuff and attach and start to feed. The birds called Egyptian plovers hop in and out of the crocodile's mouth, and they eat the leeches and any other food that is stuck in the crocodile's teeth. So the crocodile's getting these leeches out, and the bird's also cleaning its teeth. So the crocodile's getting a clean mouth, and the bird is getting food. So that's a mutualistic relationship, isn't it? Alright, so now we're going to talk about these ants right up here. Okay? Alright, so these ants live in the hollow root balls of certain plants called epiphytes. The hollow balls provide a protected nest for the ants, and the material that the ants carry into the nest creates a great nutrient-rich compost for the epiphytes. Alright, so the ants have a safe place to live, and the material that the ants are carrying to create their nest is a good compost for the epiphyte. So compost is going to help it grow. So that is a mutualistic relationship, isn't it? Alright. Now we're going to talk about this hummingbird right here, okay? That is a sword-billed hummingbird, and it can drink the nectar of a passiflora orchid. The bird needs tremendous amounts of energy, which the flower provides, and in the process of getting a meal, the bird pollinates the flower. So that's another mutualistic relationship, isn't it? The flower is getting its pollen moved, and the hummingbird is getting food to eat. Alright, so now we're going to talk about this fish right here, okay? Some rainforest trees rely on very unlikely animals to disperse their seeds. Fish. Normally we think of insects and birds and other little mammals and stuff, but fish dispersing seeds, that's really cool, isn't it? During certain times of the year, the Amazon River floods, and the fish swim into parts of the forest that they can reach only during flood season. And so as the fruit falls from the trees into the water, the fish will eat it, and later, when the seeds come out when they go to the bathroom, it lands in another area, and then that plant can grow wherever the poop landed. Okay? Alright, so now we're going to talk about this orchid right down here at the bottom. Okay? So by trapping insects, plants like this bucket orchid get pollinated. Perfume lures bees to the flower, and when the bees crawl inside the flower, they fall into a pool of liquid. By crawling out a special side door, the bees save themselves from drowning. In this process, they become coated with pollen, which they carry to the next orchid they visit. Okay, so the bees are getting nectar, but they're also carrying pollen with them that they'll send to the next orchid, that they'll rub off on the next orchid that they visit. So that will allow that flower to make a seed and continue its life cycle and growing and having the seeds is like flowers having babies. Their babies are the seeds, okay? So all of those things were mutualistic. Now remember, we talked about the other ones. We talked about commensalism, where only one animal gets benefited and the other one's not harmed or helped. And then we talked about parasitism, where one animal benefits but the other one is harmed, okay? So sometimes we have these relationships with animals and insects, don't we? When we get out in the afternoons in the late evenings and stuff, and we like to get out and play, we have to worry about mosquitoes, don't we? So that is like a parasitic relationship, because the mosquito's biting you and getting food from you, but it's causing you some pain and itching and different things like that. Okay, so what can we do in things like that? You know, a lot of the bug sprays that are out there, they have some really toxic chemicals that are really bad for the environment and actually really bad for you. So using a clean, toxin-free bug spray with essential oils or, you know, different things like that. We use one that has picaridin in it because we get bug bit really bad, and sometimes the essential oil stuff doesn't work for us. I'm still trying some different things, but, you know, using bug sprays that are chemical-free is a great way to go, because then you're not going to harm the environment, but you're going to keep the bugs off of you. And we know that a lot of times in gardening, because you know, everybody's got gardens right now, we have to fight the bugs in that. They want to eat our plants and hurt our plants, don't they? So we need to, you know, think about what are some ways that we can fight the insects, but yet still be kind to the environment. So, you know, looking for things that are toxic-free, chemical-free, that will still do its job and keep those insects off, okay? Because, yes, we have relationships with animals and insects, too, and sometimes they're not all mutualistic, are they? Sometimes they're parasitic or, you know, harmful. All right. So, just be mindful of all of that this summer. You know, try to find some clean alternatives for bug sprays and herbicides and insecticides. Think about some clean, there's stuff out there, and there's stuff out there that actually works. And think about, you know, instead of using chemical fertilizer, using compost that you make yourself from your vegetable scraps, and that's keeping all that stuff out of the landfill. So just think about things like that. You know, and another thing I've noticed too, that in the clean bug sprays and insecticides and stuff, they always come in containers that are recyclable. So that keeps that stuff from going into the landfill as well, because you can recycle it. So just think about things like that, some clean alternatives to things that are pesky for us, okay? All right, so we are going to do a craft project today. We're going to be doing some painting, okay? So I hope you guys will do this with me and share pictures. I'd love to see some pictures of the stuff that you guys are doing. So you're going to need 3 colors of paint. We're going to make a flower today, okay? I know I made a flower with you guys back around Mother's Day. We made a sunflower and we used toilet paper rolls. But today we're going to make a different kind of flower. And you need 3 colors of paint. You'll need 1 for the stem, 1 for the center, and 1 for your petals, okay? You're also going to need, of course, you'll need your sheet of paper to do it on. Right here's mine. But you're also going to need a piece of bubble wrap. Bubble wrap, bubble wrap. I love to hear that bubble snap. We watch VeggieTales. Alright, so I cut my bubble wrap in the shape of a leaf. Or a petal. Petal, I guess. We better call it a petal, because this is going to be the petals in my flower. This is going to be the pretty parts, okay? So I have some purple paint right here. I'm going to dip my bubble wrap into this purple paint, and I want to dip it with the bubbly side down in the paint, because this is going to act like a stencil for us. And when I do that, I'm going to, I don't know if I can get my camera down where you guys can see, but I'll show you here. When I dip it down in there and I get purple all over, I'm going to come and I'm just going to stamp it around like you would a stamp, okay? So let me see if I can't get my camera moved down just a little bit. Maybe you can see me right there. Alrighty, so I am going to Make sure I got paint all over my bubbles. Alrighty, see right there. Alright, and I'm just going to use this like a stamp. See how many times I can get away with using it without having to dip it again. Whoops. My paper moved a little. This would be a great fine motor activity for littles, for sure. You can talk about colors with your kids if you've got little ones and they don't know their colors yet. All right. Now, I'm going to take my yellow paint and I'm going to paint the inside of my flower. It's not actually where my paint's wet. You need to let yours dry. Mine's kind of mixing up and becoming a brown color, but that's okay. You could also, if you had pom-poms, you could glue a big pom-pom in the center if you wanted to. And then I'm going to take another paintbrush because I didn't have any water down here. And I'm going to paint me a stem. I'm going to put some little leaves on my stem. And voila, there is my flower. I probably should have made my petals a little smaller. I wasn't thinking, I guess, when I done this, but it's still pretty cool looking, isn't it? Alright, so cool flower today. If it does end up raining, this would be a great rainy day project. You could, if you've got little kids, and after this dries, they could try to count all the little bubbles that makes up their flower. That'd be some good one-to-one correspondence. And there's probably definitely over 100 here. You could even, like if you had first and second graders, let them count by 2s and 5s and 10s and stuff like that with it too, definitely. Okay. Alright guys, well I will see you all tomorrow, and tomorrow we are going to do a Father's Day craft because Father's Day is not this Sunday but next Sunday, so we're going to do a Father's Day craft tomorrow, okay? So they'll give you something that you can give your dad, because I know I did one for Mother's Day, and we don't want to leave the dads out because they're important too. So if you have a dad or a grandfather or an uncle or just somebody in your life that you really love, that's a man, we're going to make a craft tomorrow for them too, okay? Alright guys, we will see you tomorrow for our very last video because we're going to take a break for the summer. So tomorrow will be the very last video, alright? So I hope you have a great day. Tune in tomorrow morning and I'll do another video and we'll see you then, okay? Have a good day. Bye.